Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's very special Christmas edition of IncrediChat. We have a great show. Originally, we weren't going to do anything this week because normally we're Thursday nights and it's Christmas and all that great stuff. But tonight, we are honored and excited to have a wonderful, wonderful guest talking about some of our favorite characters. I got some of them here with me. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome, Rankin Bass historian Rick Goldschmidt. Rick, welcome to IncrediChat. How are you tonight?
Hey, Merry Christmas. Good.
Merry Christmas to you too, my friend. I just want to throw out here for everybody watching, on the bottom here is the link to Rick's website, miserbrothers.com. You can get his books, T-shirts, autographs, all kinds of awesome things that you can purchase there. So, go check that out. And, we have the comments open tonight. So, share this out, folks. Like us, follow us, and we'll have some questions. Rick, I'm going to start with a really, I guess, basic question that maybe you get this. What is the uniqueness of these shows? Rankin Bass, you got Disney, you got Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, Rankin Bass, the kings of Christmas. What do you think the uniqueness is of those shows?
Well, it's a lot of different things, but primarily I've been talking about the personality that Rankin Bass brought to these characters. And they did it in such a way where they got great, not only star power performers like Fred Astaire and Burl Ives and James Cagney and people like that, but they were perfect for animation. And unlike today, they'll get a Brad Pitt or someone like that to do a voice, and they may be famous, but they don't have a good voice for animation. So Rankin Bass were kind of keen on getting the right personalities for the right projects. And then the writing by Romeo Muller is key for the longevity of it, because they're always underdog characters that everyone can identify with. And then the villains reform at the end. And Andrew Stanton, who wrote the afterword in my Rudolph book and got the awards for Finding Nemo and Wall-E at Pixar, he recognized that the writing was very satisfying, where you could watch it over and over and over again and not get sick of it, So I think that's what people like about these specials.
And it's funny you mentioned Romeo Miller. Growing up, I live in the Hudson Valley in New York, and he was over on the other. I'm in the Poughkeepsie area. He was from the other side of the river, so I remember when he did pass. It was the late 90s, I guess, or mid to late 90s, and being in the local newspaper, and I had no idea he was a local guy, which was crazy.
Yeah, I actually became really good friends with his brother Gene, who since passed away, and he pretty much opened up Romeo's archives to me and sent me everything that he had, including books and records, and I have some of his original scripts too. So, the guy was a genius, and he was very into old movies and old comedians, and he wrote the Little Rascals Christmas special and went on to write Strawberry Shortcake and things like that. So, the guy
was fun in that as well.
Yeah, right. He was like a real wizard when it came to entertainment, and not many studios found people like that could write in such a way. He wasn't writing down to kids. He was writing for the whole entire family. That's why grandparents watch Rankin Bass shows. You never get tired of them because of the characters and the writing.
Well, certainly, like you said, the grandparents around today, they were kids back when these shows started. So before we get into the first big one, which we all know and love, I just want to know, and I know some of the people watching, how did you get involved with Rankin Bass, and how did you become like the official historian of the company?
Well, it was sort of a calling. Uh, it wasn't anything I intended to do. I can tell you that. I grew up loving the shows, and I was in college. I was playing out in a band, and I was doing freelance art, and I got married, and then I started calling Jack Davis because his artwork was the closest style to what I wanted to do, humor and illustration. And Jack Davis is probably one of the most renowned artists in the business, but he's most famous for Mad Magazine and EC Comics. And he told me, I knew he designed Mad Monster Party, which was one of my favorites.
Classic.
Said, what happened to Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass? And he said, oh, I still hear from Arthur every so often and do a drawing for him. You really should contact Paul Coker Jr. So I did, and Paul gave me Arthur's number in Bermuda, and I called him up from work and just said, I love the Rankin Bass specials. There really should be a book. And he said, send me 2 chapters. I went over to a friend's house. Back then, there wasn't any really computers and homes. My friend had one, and it was a primitive thing. I typed up all the text, and I cut and pasted it with photos, and I put it in a presentation binder and sent it over to Arthur. He liked it, and the next thing I got was a little mini cassette with Arthur's whole life story on it. But it was mostly about his work, not about his personal life.
Yeah.
So I just started scrounging things up, over the next several years. In fact, Arthur called me from Romeo's memorial one time early on. And he just liked what I did. And when he came out and visited with me, we were both artists. He was the art director at ABC Television in the 50s. We both loved Jack Davis and Paul Coker. So right away, we were on the same level. And he just appreciated that I appreciated his work. And that's how I became the historian. So it wasn't anything intentional. I didn't set out to write books. I didn't set out to document history. It just happened. And why it happened, I don't know. But I was lucky because I was, right out of college.
Yeah.
I was lucky to get Paul Coker, Jack Davis, Don Duca, Gene Muller, and Anthony Peters. All these people, they were in their late 60s or in their 60s, so they could share their stuff with me, their stories, and etc. If they're still living now, they're in their 90s. So it was like the right time to gather up that information and make a friendship with everyone and get all that material too.
Yeah. Now, you got to travel around, and I'm going to pull up a picture here of our buddy. Everybody loves this character. There's Rudolph and Hermey. Now, I know earlier on, Rudolph especially has been in the news a lot lately because he just sold, was it $325,000, something like that? Him and Santa sold for it?
368,000.
Oh, 368. My gosh, I was off. But my God, but you got to travel around with the puppets. Let's talk about Rudolph for a minute. I think when they made that, and you probably obviously know, did they know that they were creating this iconic holiday special?
No, they only intended it to air for 2 years. And it was primarily done to promote GE products, the houseware divisions, irons and clocks and, hair dryers, stuff like that. They kind of took a cue from Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol.
Great one.
Out in '62, and that promoted Timex watches. So I think the network was just looking for a way to cash in on Christmas, so to speak. And even the Canadian actors, they were given a 2-year buyout. So they got paid, 5 or 6 grand, and that was it.
Wow.
Nothing. So nobody could see that this was going to go on for 56 years, including Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. What they cared about was that this was going to open up the door for anything else they wanted to do in entertainment. They weren't trying to make $1 million off of Rudolph.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted to make a good show to move on to the next step. But it turned out to be like the diamond in the catalog. And Arthur appreciated it later in life when he looked at my books. But he always intended to make a Gone with the Wind,
Wow.
He wanted to make a big budget movie. It wasn't all about Rudolph and Frosty, but it never happened for him. I mean, he's a legend, and everyone involved with the shows are legends.
Yeah. I got to meet Paul Soules a couple of years ago. He was in Connecticut, and what a nice guy he is,
Yeah, a talent.
Yeah.
I love him from Spider-Man too.
Well, I was gonna say a lot of people don't know that Hermey the Elf and Spider-Man are one and the same.
Right.
Trivia there. We have a question here from Brad Kimball. Brad wants to know, how long typically would a 45-minute Animagic program take to produce? I mean, and I guess to build on that, obviously Rudolph being the first one, but then by the time they were, into the 70s, like with Santa Claus is Coming to Town, 80s with Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, did they refine the process, or was it shorter? What do you know about that?
Well, Rudolph took 18 months to produce. Not only was it basically a 50-minute special, but they did all the commercials too. 3 of the 2-minute commercials. So it was a lot of work. I think later on, Arthur, he was a very producer-like person. So he made sure things got done fast, whether it was, doable or not. So I think the window kind of shrank to like 1 year. Once they sold it to a network, they would make sure it got on the air. And that's why a lot of them are actually a half hour, 25 minutes of animation. The animation did get more fluid as time went on, but I tend to like the earlier stuff because it's simpler, it's designed simple, and it's more traditional looking to me. So I prefer the early animation to the later stuff.
Well, and speaking about the animation, I mean, I do want to come back to Rudolph in a minute, but you mentioned the animation and the design change. Like you look at Frosty the Snowman. I think I have a picture of Frosty up here. Where's our buddy Frosty? There he is. Let me pull him up here. But you look at Frosty, for instance, in the original special with Jimmy Durante. Then you get to Frosty's Winter Wonderland, and the design of the characters. I mean, obviously in that case, Frosty got the scarf, so design changed a little bit, and obviously all the kids, like they did it, and like a lot of the shows, Stingiest Man in Town, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, there was really like a different distinctive style. Do you know what the shift was from that?
Well, first of all, Paul Coker Jr. is still living, and he's one of the greatest guys. We did a show together in Dallas, and I've got to give him a call soon. But his art style was very Christmas card-like. So that's why they switched over to cell animation for some of the specials that you mentioned. Why they had to make them look different from special to special was because, like in the case of Frosty was still airing on CBS, and it's the only special to air more than 50 years on the same network. Frosty's Winter Wonderland was on ABC.
Gotcha.
So So they couldn't have Karen and Hinkle and Hocus Pocus. They had to have a whole new set of characters and a little bit of a different look too. So these specials, you have to think back to when they first aired in the late 60s and early 70s. Rankin Bass had specials on all three networks.
Yeah.
And three networks were really all people had to watch. There was no cable or streaming or DVDs or anything. So it was important for each show to look different for each network.
No, that you know, I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of sense. Wow, yeah, because I mean, so both shows would air the same year, and I mean, obviously CBS has continued with Frosty. They've picked up Rudolph over these years. A lot of those other things like Freeform and like other networks, they were syndicated after they originally aired that first or second time. I think even for a while, Santa Claus is Coming to Town wasn't on. It originally aired on a major network, and then it was like in the syndicated markets for the longest time, and now the networks picked it up once again, right?
You're right. You're right. And I remember when they were in the syndicated markets, they always had the title cell in between commercials with Santa and Jessica looking at the moon.
Yes.
Some of those things pop up on YouTube, and there's a lot of differences in the way the shows were edited too, because what they show now on ABC is all time compressed and lines are cut out and all this crazy stuff. When it was in syndication, it wasn't as cut, you know?
Well, you know, you bring up a good point because, you know, just thinking about that, and here's a picture of the guys from Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Chris and Topper there. So you're talking about the editing, you know, I mean, Frosty, I don't think gets it as bad, but God, I watched Rudolph last year. I have the DVD of Rudolph, but I felt horrible watching Rudolph on CBS. God bless CBS for airing it, but like it was horribly chopped. Oh my God.
Well, I heard this year, and I don't have Freeform, but I heard that Freeform fixed the warbles in the music.
Gotcha.
Some of the songs, when it's shown on CBS, and even on some of the older DVDs and Blu-rays, the music sounds like it's on a warped record. And I guess they fixed that on Freeform, and they also aired some of the scenes that they don't show on CBS that are on the Blu-ray and DVD.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, some of those scenes. So obviously, the first 2 years, Santa kind of forgot about the friends on the Misfit Island of toys. So they got the complaints from the parents and they went and fixed that. But there was the peppermint thing that they had cut out. But the one thing, and I know somebody in the chat was asking about this before, what's the real story behind We're a Couple of Misfits and Fame and Fortune?
Well, actually, the first airing is different than everything that came after. In the second year, they changed We're a Couple of Misfits to Fame and Fortune. Now, the reason that they did that was that Willard Saloff from GE decided he wanted a new song.
Gotcha.
And since he got it on television, Rankin Bass complied. But Arthur always liked We're a Couple of Misfits best. So he added Fame and Fortune. And the animation in Fame and Fortune, if you notice, if you watch that segment, the trees are not even decorated. It doesn't look like how it did in We're a Couple of Misfits, which is odd. They must have had to redo a set, and they didn't have the trees still from the old set. But there was really no reason to do that other than Willard Saloff wanting a new song. And the same goes with picking up the Misfit toys. Some of the people involved thought there might have been some write-in letters and things, but others said that, you know, it was just Willard Saloff's idea to have them go back to the island. So I don't think it was ever a creative decision that, the first version wasn't good, so we need to redo it. It was just this guy wanted to make some changes. So they said, okay, since you got it on the air, we'll make those changes for you.
Gotcha. Now, we have Susan Nelson here, and I'm a little confused by her question. Because I mean, I guess Rankin Bass did everything, but she wants to know about the spin-off. How many spin-offs were there? And was the Easter Bunny one the worst? I'm not sure which one she's talking about. But I guess kind of leading into a question I had, and it's funny, I've done research. My girlfriend's from England. She never really got to see any of these. So I'm introducing these to her this year. The world of Rankin Bass. And I growing up, and maybe you've heard this too, I kind of look at some of these films in regards to spin-offs, almost like the early Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like you can watch them in a particular order. They are loosely connected. Did they try initially to do some of that? Because, we were talking about Frosty's Winter Wonderland. Later on, we see Frosty and Crystal again with Rudolph, Billy Richards, and we see Mickey, Rooney, Santa. They all come together in the Christmas in July film. Were they at some point thinking to interconnect all these characters, or was that just kind of thrown out there?
It kind of happened. Well, see, the thing about Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July is it was a feature film in the theaters. In 79. Now, I have the movie posters and the press material and everything. And Arthur always says, we put that out in the summer and it was a bad mistake. I can remember looking in the newspapers for movies in 79, and I don't remember Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July. But then they cut it as a 90-minute TV special for ABC.
Also, the longer version of it?
Yeah. So I think it was the same year. They went right to television at Christmas time for a movie that premiered in the theaters in the summer, which was weird. But no, I think that particular project came about because I seem to recall that it was another Avco release, and the specials were so popular they probably just said, let's bring this to the movies and bring everyone together, and it seemed like it would be like a moneymaker, but it didn't turn out to be that way. So now we see it on AMC every year. And, I think that's what causes some of the confusion as to the whole universe. But it's funny you mentioned the Marvel universe, which I'm a big Marvel fan as far as the original comic books with Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and all the other Marvel bullpen. And, Romeo Muller and Tony Peters in the case of Rudolph, and then Romeo Muller and Paul Coker Jr. are like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. They created all of these characters in this universe and really created something special that I think their estates need to be rewarded because they haven't seen a lot of the money from the merchandise. These are the two main guys who did everything. And it took a long time for Jack Kirby's estate to get money, and that was only a couple of years ago. So it's kind of a similar thing between Marvel and Rankin Bass as far as how characters go.
Now, because in regards even to, like, again, talking just like licensing and estates and all that, so Rankin Bass, and it's in regards to even just these Christmas specials, like there is not one particular studio that owns Rankin Bass at this point. Like I know Warner's has a handful of them. I guess Classic Media, I think, still has like Rudolph and Frosty.
Well, Universal does now. The funny thing about it is this: the special, from Rudolph, and actually from Return to Oz, which predates Rudolph by 8 months. or 12 months. The specials were all financed by General Electric. And they started a entertainment division called Tomorrow Entertainment. You'll see that in the credits of all the Rankin Bass shows. Tomorrow Entertainment. Up to 74. And then in 74, when The Year Without a Santa Claus and 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and all the others followed, those were with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
So Rankin Bass never owned their actual shows. They owned parts of them, you know, of them, and when the shows sold, they got money from that sale. But back in the 60s, when these contracts were written, because I have some of them, they're only like 2 pages.
Yeah.
There's no mention of merchandise in a lot of the contracts. So when you have people merchandising stuff, the shows, when they only own the shows, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And Disney found that out from Jack Kirby's estate. And, you know, Stan Lee got his cut through Marvel, whoever owned Marvel in the 80s or 90s, whenever he was paid. So it's a kind of a difficult thing to understand. But the shows are one thing, you know, for broadcast and everything else. Merchandising is a whole different ballpark.
Yeah, because I would say back when these things were on, there really was no merchandise. Like, was it Playing Mantis? Like a few years ago, like gosh, more than a few years ago, like probably almost 20 years, they put out all these great little figurines. There was nothing like this in the 60s and the 70s for these shows.
Well, there's a funny story that I talked about in an interview the other day. When I did my book in 1997, there was nothing at all. There was there was some stuff based on Pinocchio from Rankin Bass in the 60s. There was King Kong merchandise from the television show, but very few items at all. And then when my book came out in 97, the executive from a toy company called Stuffin took it on the plane to Japan to a toy fair. He saw there was no merchandise, and he got the idea to do beanbag dolls.
That's right. I remember those.
For CVS pharmacies.
Yep.
So in 98, I think it was, he called me up and he said, "We're doing beanbag dolls. Let me send you 3 sets of them to see what you think of them, a set for each of my kids." And, you know, of course I loved them because there was nothing on Rudolph, nothing that even looked like the Rankin Bass Rudolph characters. And then, of course, after that, like the next year, they had a whole section bigger than this room I'm in of toys and plates and tree skirts, ornaments, and all this stuff. And then a few years after that, I was at a book signing, and I got a call from Enesco Corporation. They said, "We saw you on WGN News, and we're doing Rudolph figures. We'd like you to come in and take a look at them." They had this big showroom with Rudolph figures, and Rudolph was playing on the TV. So I got involved with that, and I helped design and give direction and gave talks to their employees and so forth. And it just exploded after that. And Playing Mantis in round 2, I was involved with that a little bit. So, I mean, all of this stuff, now it's everywhere. You could go in a hardware store and they'll have stuff from Rudolph and Frosty. So,
yeah, the inflatable bumbles that everybody has those on their front lawns. Everywhere you go, there's stuff. Because I remember even as a kid, like I would draw the characters. I'm like, I wish there'd be like a cool toy. Like you'd have a snowman that maybe kind of looked like Frosty, but it wasn't quite Frosty, you know. And then different versions of Rudolph, but it was the uniqueness of the Rankin Bass characters. Because then again, these little toys, like I mean, he's one of my favorite characters from the show's Topper, you know, and like to have a Topper, like this is great now, you know. Because I set them. Most people, I'm sure, do. You see it on like some of these Rankin Bass things. They set them all up for Christmas time, and these figures, like from playing Mantis, they're worth a couple of bucks now too, which I had no idea. I wish I knew.
Yeah, the front stair in the mail truck goes for about $350 to $400.
Wow.
Some of these things only came out for like 1 year. Like the Charlie in the box, that's big. The Bumble, that's kind of big. There's different things that were only out for like 1 year, so they're hard to find now. And
I think even like the Frosty line they did, because the Frosty line was based off of the Winter Wonderland. So you had the regular Frosty, and then you had Crystal, and then even though they weren't in the show, you had Chili Millie and the dog. Who the dog was never even featured in anything. I think maybe in like a dream sequence, right?
Right.
And then the Snow Parson and Jack Frost, and again, like Snow Parson, again, he's another character that goes for like $70 I've seen online. And who would have thought? Like I wasn't like, I don't want. When I saw it, I was like, I want Frosty. I don't want the Snow Parson. I wish I got the Snow Parson now.
Right. Some of them too, like with round 2 and playing Mantis, they would. Because my friend, Time and Space Toys, Kevin Kreis, who used to own Rudolph and Santa, he told me, like, when they shipped the boxes, they would ship you, like, a bunch of, Santas, a bunch of this, and then, like, one Eskimo. So, like, there were some rare ones that there were only, like, one of in a box that, the value of those would go up, of course, because they were so scarce.
Well, here's my little Eskimo. And he came with the cool little igloo. But yeah, no, I mean, they were such great toys. Now let's talk about Time and Space Toys, because I do want to talk more about the specials too. But those the two puppets, right? What was the story? Because now they did a lot of the puppet animation that was done overseas, correct?
Right.
So how do you know the story of how Santa and Rudolph came over here? Are there other puppets, not even just from Rudolph, but from any of the other productions that are still around, like, from Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Life and Adventures, anything like that? Still lingering out?
Well, here's the story on the puppets. And my books, even the most recent books, the one on Making of Santa Claus is Coming to Town and the Frosty the Snowman scrapbook, we put chapters in every book about puppets that we found, information I learned, where the puppets are and that kind of thing. Because we know, and also I'm a fan, so I want to know what happened to the puppets and what's the story behind them. Now, with the Rudolph and Santa, the story's still evolving because it's hard to put everything together. When Kevin found them, he got a hold of me, but that guy who was selling them already got a hold of me before he ever went on Antiques Roadshow and before he ever sold them. So I already kind of knew what was going on. And Arthur, he had no clue where they came from or what they were or whatever. Mm-hmm. But he confirmed that they were ones that were in his office. Now, that said, the group that those came out of were the ones that were in NBC. They were on display.
Okay.
For several years, they were at the Rockefeller Plaza, and school field trips would go there and see them in a glass case. Mm-hmm. So they were taken apart and restored by Screen Novelties. So we know that they were used for some of the animation, because I think Rudolph had a hole in his side, which would have been there to put him on a sleigh or put him in flight. But the more the older I get and the more I investigate it, there's another Santa that we have pictured in my last two books, mm-hmm. that Moshinaga, who was the head animator, and hung on to a lot of the stuff. His Santa, which is deteriorating a little bit now, and you can see in the pictures, I could tell the shape of his beard and where the lines are, where it's kind of coming apart, is the same one that I'm seeing in the show.
Interesting.
You know, if you look for it, the shape of the beard and the lines and all of that, you can tell his puppet is the one that they were mostly using to animate, because the Santa that we see, you know, from the auction, he has a bigger beard and he seems bigger. And I think they used them mostly for photos, you know, promotional photos, to put them in the NBC building and all of that. So there's other puppets, and there's other puppets from Rudolph. Now, that's the thing about the internet. You get a lot of fake news on the internet, and stories get changed, and they're incorrect, and they're on Internet Movie Database. And, you know, the other one, I can't even remember the name of it, but I see a lot of errors in everything that I look at, because they'll say, like, those are the only two that survive.
Well, because that's what I read, was that, and it was what just recently with this, I guess whoever had them, apparently they were part of their holiday, their Christmas displays in their home, right? And then I guess there were some other ones that they had with Rudolph and Santa that were in the attic, which were beyond any kind of repair. So,
right. Well, Barbara Adams was Arthur and Jules' secretary in the 1970s, and I know her now. We met at Arthur's memorial, and she couldn't remember which ones she took home. You know, so when I said, you know, was it Yukon? Was it the Bumble? Was it this and that? She had no clue. She couldn't remember. She just took some home and gave them to her nephew and other family members, and they kind of used them out on the candy dishes at Christmas time and played with them, because Rudolph had Play-Doh in his nose.
Did he really?
Gone.
Thank God.
Yeah, so he got restored by Screen Novelties, and they corrected me this year. They put an LED light on his nose, and I was saying they put the exact same light bulb, but they didn't. And they didn't use yak hair on Santa's beard. It was mohair that matched it. So, I mean, there's all these little details about the puppets and things. What's cool is I appear with a lot of them. A friend of mine in New Jersey has Father Time and Sister Teresa, which I used to own, and I sold it back to them. And then out on the West Coast, they have Smokey the Bear, a couple from Marco, Tree Elves, and they have two from the Daydreamer, the Little Mermaid and the Sea Witch, and then they have Octavia, which I sold them from the first Christmas. So there are some puppets in the States, but most of them are in Japan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, that would be, you know, I just think here in New York, we've got like the Museum of the Moving Image. Like some of those things, that would be like phenomenal to see. You know, I mean, obviously, if they were here in the States, like it'd be a great display of the holidays to have, like all these characters. I'm sure even like maybe, I'm sure out there in the world ourselves from a lot of these the traditional 2D animation stuff. Yeah,
we have some of those, and my stuff's been in different museums too. Louisville Slugger Bat Museum had a display of my stuff, even with one of the puppets a few years ago. And then we put some stuff in a local library here. I've had stuff in Germany in a museum. So, you know, I like to share my stuff because I got so much of it. I hope some of the people that buy the puppets or have the puppets will share them. You know, that was what I was hoping from the Rudolph and Santa auction, but I don't know who bought them yet because it's private.
Gotcha. I mean, I assume something like that. I mean, they're not going to just fade away. Like at some point, people will know where they are.
Right.
I'm sure. Right. You never know who bought them, but exactly. You know, it's Rudolph and Santa, two of the iconic holiday characters. So they will be around. So
okay. What's interesting is when we took Rudolph and Santa around to different shows, there were some shows that, you know, like Wizard World in Ohio Con, Comic Con, where people were interested, but they weren't like lining up, you know. But we did. We were at the Holiday Magic in Brookfield Zoo, which was a 2-day thing, and we had this giant tent. It was like, I don't know, a block long with tables in it and stuff. And line to see Rudolph and Santa and get a book signed was like, you know, 300, 400 people long, it seemed like.
Wow.
And their eyes just lit up, you know. And I mean, it was like meeting, you know, Adam West and Burt Ward, or you know, something like that iconic. It was kind of cool to see how people, you know, cared about them. So hopefully something like that will happen again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like you said, that people light up to see it. Like Brad was saying earlier, you know, these movies, which you said took 18 months, you know, to produce this, and you know, once they were done, like, you know, they a lot of these became iconic. But then, like, what happened to these puppets? You know, unlike an Adam West or Burt Ward, you know, they're not living, breathing things that are traveling around. You know, and so actually see that physically, like, it's cool to have like the toys and stuff, but the actual puppet itself, you know, I guess there is a uniqueness, any kind of like prop.
Yeah, they're really cool to see in person too. You know, they can move, and you know, I used to have the Sister Teresa and the Octavia. Their fingers were bendable, and they were kind of rubber coated, and they had all the eyes and the mouths, and it's just like, you look at it and you wonder, how did they make them look so lifelike on film? You know, it's kind of interesting to see, because it just doesn't look like it could be animated the way that it was. You know?
Yeah. Well, and you know, especially when you're thinking about the time period when these were being made, you know, especially like Rudolph in the 60s, you know, nobody else was really doing stuff. I mean, honestly, that was even before, or that was really like right at the start when like Jim Henson was doing all the Muppet stuff. Even he was like learning his craft in like the 60s, you know, doing Ed Sullivan and all those things, Jimmy Dean. But you know, when my Nightmare Before Christmas came out, like, and everybody thought how like it was so revolutionary, this film, you know, but it's like they did this, they did other Christmas movies with stop motion, you know. So
well, they were very influential. Something that happened this year, you know, I knew, because I started, when I first did my book, I got the people from Pixar, and they were just starting out to do some comments from my books and so forth. And they used to send me, and I have them all, the art of every movie with drawings from everybody at the studio. So they loved Rankin Bass. And this year, I helped with a show on Netflix called The Movies That Made Us.
Yes.
And I guess it focuses primarily on Elf. And Jon Favreau says in the show, I haven't seen the show, but I guess he said in the show, I took a big Rankin Bass book into the meeting, and I said, I want to pay tribute to this, you know, animation with the film. And I've been getting a lot of orders for my big Rankin Bass book this year. So I think that helped with a lot of the recent sales that I got. But I mean, it inspired so many people in the business to do similar works, especially with Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And my friend Joe Ranft was the storyboarder on Nightmare Before Christmas, and he commented throughout the Rudolph book. He passed away. He was one of the big people at Pixar, but
voice of Heimler.
Great love of Rankin Bass, that guy.
Yeah. Now let me just ask, like, Rankin Bass. I mean, I guess it's one of those studios. I mean, they were always known for Christmas, but on the side, like they did Mad Monster Party, you said. I mean, and like you even laugh and think like the same people that did Rudolph did Thundercats.
Well, you know what? They were kind of pioneers in entertainment. I mean, they tried everything. And the funny thing is, if you look at my book, The Enchanted World of Rankin Bass, how many of these things were successful? Pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Even things like The Flight of Dragons and The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. I mean, Arthur Rankin, when he came to my house, I had him sign a VHS for a friend of mine of The Life and Adventures. And he kind of like slammed it down, and he was like, I didn't like this the way this one turned out. But you know what? It has a whole group of fans.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny. I think I have a picture because as a kid, and again knowing Rankin Bass, and I can say I remember watching that and be like, wait a second, this isn't Rudolph and stuff. Like where's Hermey? Because I mean,
well, they were true to the material too, like The Hobbit, Return of the King, and The Last Unicorn. I mean, these were different styles, different writing, different music, different, everything. And still they treated it as an art form, and they stayed true to the material, and the stuff worked for that reason.
Yeah.
It's weird. They didn't Rankin Bass-anize it. They didn't say, let's take Last Unicorn and make it a Rudolph. That wouldn't have worked. So they were smart. They were really, really smart people that worked on these shows.
Now, let me ask you now, too, again, someone brought up spin-offs of these things and later and not even necessarily Rankin Bass shows. So they had, so obviously CBS airs Frosty now, and then I don't know why, because it's not even Rankin Bass. They show Frosty Returns, like they pair those two up,
That was one of the first things I asked about way back when I started my relationship with Golden Books that owned them back then. And I said to the girl who used to send me like all kinds of tapes of things that I needed. I said, why are they showing Frosty Returns? That thing is horrible.
Yeah.
Even Rankin said they sent it to him and he didn't want to comment on it because it was so bad. But she told me that the ratings for Frosty Returns at the time were bigger than Frosty because people changed the channels at 7:30, and then their ratings got good. But I can't imagine tuning into that thing and staying tuned into it because I can't watch it. It's bad.
I mean, obviously now, even though it's like out there in like the freeform syndicated world, I always thought if you're gonna do like an hour block of Frosty, do Frosty, then Frosty's Winter Wonderland, and then I think there was another one. There's another, and it's really the style is very based on the Rankin Bass. There's The Adventures of Frosty the Snowman. I haven't seen that one. I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, I remember when that came out. I think that was a Classic Media produced thing, and the guy who did that show was telling me that I should like it. And I said, I don't care for this at all. And he's like, well, my kids like it. And I'm like, okay. The sad thing is no one can seem to understand what makes these specials work.
Yeah.
You know, like that Miser Brothers Christmas and
Sequel. Misfit Toys.
I mean, of course, people are going to like stuff that maybe they were a baby or a small kid when that came on TV and they saw it and they liked it for some reason. People are going to like stuff like that, but if you compare them to the original classics and you have a knowledge of music and writing and character design and all of that, you're just going to see these don't stack up.
Yeah. I forgot about the Miser Brothers Christmas because I was thinking of the Frosty. I was thinking of the couple of Frosties, and then like I said, the Rudolph and the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Island of Misfit Toys, which was cool because they brought back Hermey and Yukon and everybody, but the story was like horrible on that one too.
Well, that one, I you know what? I can't watch any of these because I'm an artist. My degree's in illustration.
Yeah.
And I don't like the way something looks. I won't watch it. You know, like Disney when they came out with Frozen,
Mm-hmm.
and it was such a huge success with modern day audiences. But when I saw it, and I saw that Olaf character,
Mm-hmm.
that's like Frosty in a rubber room. It's like I couldn't even give it a chance because I don't like the design of it. I don't like the way it looks. So, you know, if it has a good story or music or whatever, I'm not even going to be there. But
Yeah.
the modern audiences, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me to look at things in their perspective because I'm dealing with classics that have been on for 56 years. You know?
And 20 in the case of Frosty Returns, unfortunately.
Oh God, that's Arthur just said. You know, I have it on tape when he was talking about that, but that he described that as no more gloves on Mickey Mouse. You know, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these remakes and redos and hardly any of them work. I don't think there maybe been a few that have been as good as or maybe almost as good as the original, but everything else nowhere near it.
Well, you know, I saw that they're supposed to be Jason Momoa is going to be doing a live action CGI Frosty. I guess they're working on that. That's coming out, and because that's what I was going to ask. With Universal owning some of these things, like, could you see them doing a remake of not that people want it, but this is the way the world is. Could you see them doing a remake of Rudolph with Hermey and Yukon and?
Well, for years, part of what I do, you know, this has been going on like 30 years for me. I've been hearing from producers, directors, writers, and actors in Hollywood all these years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Don Murphy, who did Natural Born Killers and started the Planet of the Apes movie that Tim Burton did, he wanted to do Rudolph as Babe, you know, with real animals and stuff. He had an idea. You know, Mad Monster Party's been thrown around as a live action and then CGI and all this stuff. But, you know, really what makes the film special is the stop motion animation. You take that out of it and you got like not much of anything. So I just don't see it happening or working ever. But you know, obviously they're going to try and they're going to, you know, do things. Jon Favreau, when Elf was such a success, he actually did buy the rights to make a feature film out of The Year Without a Santa Claus. And then I tried contacting him, you know, through Facebook. I guess we're friends on Facebook. I always felt like if someone were to invest millions and millions of dollars into a modern day film, they should get me involved only because I know the essence of the programs and what it took to make them, who it took to make them,
Yeah.
what type of writing, what type of music, all of that stuff. But it seems like big films nowadays, there's like a sort of a group mentality.
Yeah.
Where it's always like focus groups and this and that, and let's make it this way, and let's make it, with the farting jokes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's going to ruin
these characters.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's common sense if you're going to spend that kind of money to get the right people, but I don't see it ever really happening.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, like you've seen in not a Rankin Bass special, but a holiday special, like you see they've made the 2 other Grinch films. But I mean, the best Grinch one is the Chuck Jones one, period.
Right. Right.
Like, because the other thing too is like, I saw the Jim Carrey one, like added elements to the character, but then like I saw the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, was it 2 years ago when it came out, and like the Grinch story doesn't need to be an hour and a half, like they don't need to stretch it out. It is what it is, It's the book, the cartoon. Now to Chuck Jones, it's the book. That's it,
You know what would actually work better for Hollywood, and I thought about this again a few days ago. If they were to make a really nice print of the special, the actual specials, and then put them together, like Rudolph with Frosty and Santa Claus is coming to town in HD, 6K, whatever it is, and just put them in the theater. Those would make more money than a remake with, the guy you just said.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Now, let me ask you too. I mean, obviously researching all these specials, like we live in a world of streaming. We live in the world of DVD and VHS, right?
Right.
Gone is really the event special now. Like, do you ever think our society will ever get back to that? Like, I mean, yes, Rudolph and Frosty are on every year and people get excited for it, but like, thinking CBS used to have like that thing that would come out there and you'd like, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to watch it because it's a special.
Right. No, I think that's gone forever. In fact, I don't think the networks are going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there will be network TV anymore. The stuff that they put on there now is so wretched. I don't even. I find myself mostly watching Blu-rays and rare DVDs, and I don't watch TV anymore. I got rid of the dish and everything. I'm like, forget it. And streaming, I don't really get into that. I understand it, but I don't get into that either. I just have a lot of Blu-rays here and a lot of DVDs.
That's the thing, and especially talking about these Rankin Bass shows, many of those are probably never going to be on some of the streaming services. Like, like Stingiest Man in Town. I don't think people are clamoring to watch that on Netflix.
Well, this year, I was hearing from a lot of people that the Rankin Bass shows weren't streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but the ones that were airing on the network, people were saying, why can't I stream this? It's not on the streaming. I don't know. They probably don't have rights for streaming. That's another interesting thing about rights. Earl Hagen, I was friends with Earl Hagen, and Earl Hagen wrote the Andy Griffith theme song, Dick Van Dyke theme song, That Girl theme song, Gomer Pyle theme song. He wrote all these theme songs. And when he re-signed his contract with Viacom in the 70s or early 80s, there was no streaming. There was no Blu-rays. There was no this and that. So rights for streaming. What's that?
Oh no! Something just popped up on the screen. Pop up.
Oh. Well, his estate I think it was this year, like towards the beginning of the year or in the summer, they're resuing Viacom, and it's because these platforms didn't exist when he signed his contract.
Absolutely.
And that goes with everything. That goes with acting and writing and music and this and that. If it's going to be used on a different platform and you never signed off on it, you're owed money from that transaction.
Well, that's the thing. And who knows what technologies will come in the future for all these things. You may put some kind of thing on and be immersed in the world of Rudolph, and that's all new copyright stuff.
Exactly.
So interesting. Two more quick questions before we go.
Sure.
The first one actually came from my girlfriend. She wants to know the origins to Happy Birthday. Why do Frosty, the parson, Crystal, the kids, why is it Happy Birthday?
Well, completely out of the mind of Romeo Muller, the writer. It's funny. He took a character that was in comic books, was in golden books, that was on short animated things, in advertisements, in the song, and all of the stuff, and he just gave it personality. And Jackie Vernon was a perfect voice for Frosty.
Yeah.
And, he got this idea that he has to have the hat on his head to come to life and say happy birthday every time he comes to life. And all kinds of other things. He's a belly whopper, you know. He made all this stuff up, but we take it as fact, And Santa Claus is coming to town, he's ho-ho-hoing because the seals are showing him that. And he's going down the chimney because the Burgermeister had everybody lock the doors. So this is all like history written by Romeo Muller that we just all know now.
So there's no real reason why, it just is.
Right. No, it came right from Romeo,
Nice. And then for our final thing, what is your all-time favorite Rankin Bass special? I'll tell you mine. I love 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. I watched it every Christmas Eve. Joel Grey, George Gobel. I love Even a Miracle Needs a Hand, but it's a great. And I found at a Salvation Army. I found the record, which amazing. But what is your favorite?
Well, that's one of my favorites. I think I like most all of them, to be honest with you. But I like Rudolph the best for the look of it, because I like vintage old Christmas stuff, glass ornaments and simple elves, simple Santa, all of that stuff. And Rudolph is all of that on screen, it's very vintage looking, which is what I like about it most, the look of it. And of course, the Bumble, to me, is one of my favorite characters. I remember my brother used to be afraid of the Bumble. It was that scary, So I like that character too. So I'd have to say Rudolph, but I like them all. Even Santa Claus Is Coming to Town is got so much heart in it that it kind of makes me proud to be a part of this history.
Yeah.
And the little drummer boy too is one you don't see too much, but
Nestor. Gosh.
Nestor. Yeah, Nestor is one of those that has a lot of heart to it.
Yeah.
Like the First Christmas. I mean, there's so many of them that are really great. And you got to watch Rudolph's Shiny New Year on New Year's Eve.
Yep.
And Mad Monster Party on Halloween, and Here Comes Peter Cottontail on Easter. And
you see, for me, I like Here Comes Peter Cottontail, but for me, again, talking about the RBU, if you will, the Rankin Bass universe, I like Easter Bunny's Coming to Town because we have Cougar back in there again.
I have to watch all three of the Easter. The Easter the first Easter Rabbit is good too, because it's Burl Ives.
Yeah. But no, it's all great stuff. And I mean, and I definitely would love to have you come back on here. We could talk about Silverhawks and comic strip and Thundercats, the Hobbit films. Like, I mean, my God, Rankin Bass did everything. But I mean, for tonight, this was a real Christmas gift. That again, I'm very appreciative of you joining us tonight to talk about these shows. You know, and the folks who are watching and have been enjoying this too on my platforms. I'm monitoring like 3 different devices here. But I mean, it was a real treat to talk about these shows tonight. You know, classics.
Well, thanks for having me. Merry Christmas too.
Merry Christmas to you. And folks, we'll see you next week. We'll just hold on. I'll keep you here for a minute, Rick. We'll see everybody. I may throw some best stuff up later this week. And we might be back next week. If not, we'll be back in January in the new year. So if we don't see you before then, folks, have a great holiday. And we'll see you all soon. Thank you again, Rick.
Thank you.